Hi guys, this is our new syntax lesson. I hope first that all of you are well and safe in some safe place, and I do hope that we will meet very soon. In the meantime, we will need to manage somehow our syntax classes. So this is the first attempt to do something online. So I'm using a software, FreeCam. So I'm going to post this on YouTube for you. And I would also like to inform you that probably next Monday, we are going to meet online in our university system. So you will be able to ask questions, to participate, but today I'm going just to prepare the first lesson, so not to miss too much, because I know how much you love syntax. So let's start. If you just go to our system, you will find that material that is already there. So we started speaking about categories and functions, as you remember. So if you remember, categories were described as kind of, let's say, actors, and functions would be roles they take, in a sentence. So if you just go to nastavni materijali, so you can find this material already there. Okay. Oh, this is analysis. No, let's go to lectures. Okay. So we started speaking about this. Okay. I'll make this just a little bigger. So as you remember, each sentence can be divided into these two main clusters of words, like subject related, which is the yellow, and purple, which represent like basically predicate. When we say predicate, at the level of syntax, we speak about not only the verb, but also everything that complements the verb. So it can be, we will see, like any type of object, even adverbial or some other category. So you remember, I hope, that we mentioned that probably the most important thing when analyzing sentences is to actually determine, to find all the verbs within that sentence, and then to find basically what type that verb is in terms of its transitivity. So we can speak about verbs that are not transitive, which means they do not require any object, but also we have different types of transitivity and transitive verbs. So complements of these different verbs, as you remember, can be direct object, indirect object, subject complement, or adverbial, and we will now see actually which functions we can have within a sentence. So let's just take one very simple sentence. The girl showed the diary to the tramp. And if we just think about what we mentioned before, and you remember that term probably, it's distribution. So if you compare these two sentences, then you can say these two sentences have exactly the same constituents. Like we have the girl, and we have the girl, and show the same verb, and all the other noun phrases. So what's the difference here? that's their distribution in this sentence. So why is this important? When this is the main difference between morphology and syntax. So you probably, so far within your morphology classes, you just analyzed certain word classes within a system, meaning the context in which they appear was not important. So let's say the girl is just a noun phrase, or the diary is just another noun phrase, or the tramp. But in syntax, it really matters where these noun phrases actually where they are or how they are distributed. So if the girl appears at the beginning of this sentence, it is a subject. But if you just put that same noun phrase at the end of the sentence, then we speak about indirect object. Or if we, let's say, imagine the girl is here, then it would be direct object. So distribution is the term that we already mentioned, but I just want to emphasize again that we need to remember that one. Okay, so this seems to be an easy one, subject as a function. So you can have like typical categories that function as subject. So it's usually a noun or a pronoun, and basically we will watch both nouns and pronouns as noun phrases in our analysis. So subject noun phrase is an agent, someone or somebody, if we speak in terms of semantics, someone who does something. But structurally speaking, we can check, we can prove if something is a subject through these, three kind of tests. Like, can you invert subject and the auxiliary verb? So you can say the tramp was laughing. So when you have a noun phrase that is a subject, basically you can make inversion. You can say, was the tramp laughing? So this is one test. And then you will always have congruence, between noun, subject noun phrase and the verb. That is basically agreement. So you can say the tramps were, or the tramp was. Why is this so? Because because of this proximity rule, basically. But in any case, you will always find the subject affecting the verb. So this is the second feature that you can use to recognize the subject. And also, if you have a pronoun instead of the noun phrase, again, that pronoun will appear in its subjective and not objective form, meaning him in this case. So I guess it will be easy for you to identify subjects in these sentences. Well, is it? What's wrong with this first sentence? So the patient has been examined by Dr. McDonald. We usually have this urge to say, okay, the first one is the subject. So the subject is always at the beginning of a sentence. Well, it's kind of true. So is this true in this case? Well, it is. However, what makes us, think again, semantics of this sentence? Because this is passive. So basically, the patient is not the agent. You say that actually Dr. McDonald did something. He examined the patient. However, in syntax, you just need to take care and watch the structure and the distribution. So the patient in the passive sentence actually is the subject. Okay, it's not, it's basically grammatical subject, but anyway, it's the subject in this sentence. And if we make this sentence active, then we would have Dr. MacDonald as the subject. Okay. Then the second one, the tramp was shaving himself. If you go through these three tests, you will have the congruence or agreement, and also you can prove instead of the tramp you can use he and not him. So basically this is the subject also. The same with the exam. And watch this. This might look tricky because this that painting, this noun phrase appears at the beginning of the sentence, and we are usually kind of used to see subject at the very beginning. However, this is something that happens if you want to emphasize some information within a sentence. You will do fronting, so you will move certain elements of sentence to the front, like to the left, so if you just use neutral focus, like you would say normally, Sue doesn't like that painting, which would be normal emphasis, normal type of information. However, if you want to emphasize, you do the fronting and you will say that painting Sue doesn't like. Well, you might sound like Yoda in this case, but we might find this type of sentences sometimes. So what's the subject here? Well, again, go back and try to see, can you do the inversion, can you find the agreement, and can you use substitution, like can you use just pronoun instead of this noun phrase. So if you try that with this noun phrase, you can say, okay, it doesn't work, because you would say it Sue doesn't like, or that. Well, it's neutral, so in case of a person it would be him. But again, if you check by inversion, the first test, then you will say that painting doesn't, or that painting, basically we have another noun phrase just next to it, so you cannot prove this is a subject. But with Sue, if you try these three, you will say, okay, we have she doesn't like that painting or something, so it's she, it's not her. Then it can be, we can use inversion, like does Sue or doesn't Sue like that painting, and we have congruence, we have agreement. Because of the third person singular, the verb is in does and not do. So you can syntactically prove that this noun phrase is the subject of this sentence. Okay. In this last one, we have information about time of the action. So it's adverbial, and then we look for a noun phrase. So the boys is the first one. So if you again try to do this, these three tests, you will see this is subject. Okay. Well, you might have some questions about this, so we can discuss that maybe next time during our online class. So let's move on. Well, I don't know if you remember from the last time we mentioned these, copula verbs. So let's say she is my friend. Okay. So so she is my friend. So this verb we call linking verb because we have, if we just take this verb off, we will have like just two elements, she, my friend, which is like equal. We are referring to the same person. So she, my friend, she is my friend. So we call this linking verb, as you remember, and other linking verbs are see, or sound, or if you remember what we said, like sensors, smell. She smells nice, or she is nice. But just try to remember for now that it is usually the verb to be. So and if you just try to to compare these elements before the verb, like she, and what follows the verb, it's kind of, you can put, these are like equal. Well, usually when we speak about a predicate, we think about sentences like, some kind of normal sentences, like she lives in Mostar, let's say. So you have who, she, and then you have a verb, and you have a complement, which is adverbial here, prepositional phrase. But this is different. So you can say, okay, this is subject, she is subject, lives is predicate, in Mostar is adverbial. It's that kind of formula, subject, verb, adverbial. But what about this one? This is subject, of course. And then we have verb. And this, if you speak about linking verb, this is what we call subject complement. Okay. Subject complement. So if you speak about predication, predicate, it's is plus subject complement. So she is that, first subject related part of the sentence, and the rest is predicate. So this is what we call, it's nominal predication. Like it could be also, she is, nice, or she is the one, or she is the second. So it can be, it can be noun phrase, it can be adjective, pronoun, a number, or so. All of these are not typical word classes that you can find together with a verb, but if they function as subject complement, you can expect kind of nominal categories in this position in a sentence. So these are some examples. Jane seemed a good student, or seems, or looked, John looked foolish. It's adjective. This is a noun phrase. This is also a noun phrase. And Bill was in a filthy mood. So be careful with this one, because this is subject complement, and as a category, this is a prepositional phrase, you know, in a filthy mood. So be careful, because sometimes you will just have the verb to be plus adverbial, which is different from this example. So if you have Bill is, let's say, in front of his house, then this is not a subject complement. You know, this is a subject complement, but this is not a subject complement, because this is just the verb to be plus adverbial. Although you can argue, you know, as you can quite often in syntax, that, let's say, metaphorically speaking, this is also a description of a place. Where was he? However, we need to remember here that the verb to be is like, you know, like the most commonly used copula or linking verb, and you can find some other verbs like seem, look, smell, and so on, but usually it's just the verb to be. If you have the verb to be, then it's not kind of regular verb or predicate, but since the verb to be requires some kind of complement which is nominal, you will find in the role of predicate, you will find nouns, noun phrases, prepositional phrases, numbers, pronouns, and so on. Okay. Then, speaking about monotransitive and ditransitive verbs, do you remember that? Like, let's get back to this. You remember, if you have only one, usually direct object, like he killed the mouse, it's monotransitive, meaning one, like one transition, one object. But if you have, okay, the first example, like we have the verb and then action, you know, goes first to the one, to this first object, and also we have another object. So we have one verb and direct transition from that verb to two different objects. So this is the transitive verb. Okay. Well, so we have one example with the transitive verb. So remember again, I need to emphasize this again, like one verb can be both, you know, monotransitive and ditransitive, or even intransitive. So it depends on what? It depends on the context. It depends on actually of its distribution, in what type of sentence it appears. So you will find, don't get confused, you know, if you find one verb being, you know, sometimes ditransitive and sometimes, let's say, monotransitive. Okay, so we have two complements here, but not two transitions. So let's say typical ditransitive would be, okay, we have this example. So this is the transitive verb, because we have, she had given what? No chocolate. And then she had given to whom? To the tramp. So two transitions from the verb to give, okay, or had given in this case. However, so the first object is direct object, and the second one is indirect object. Okay, so to the tramp is indirect object, and we can make this sentence just, she had given the tramp no chocolate. You know, we can have inversion here, so you cannot always be sure actually and claim that the first object is always a direct object. It's not necessarily. And we have a new term here, it's adjunct. We'll speak more about adjuncts, but if you would, let's say, speak about the difference between complement and adjunct, it would be like complement would be obligatory element that follows the verb, and then adjunct is what can be actually omitted. So, you know, we consider all of this verb phrase, but if you think now, the magazine is a complement because it's obligatory, and for the second time would be an adjunct because it's not obligatory. So you can just have a normal sentence like this that ends, you know, here. So the tramp was unfolding the magazine, which is a perfectly fine sentence. So the difference between complement and adjunct would be that a complement is obligatory, you know, complement. However, as I said, when you analyze a sentence, you will, again, let's focus on this. So you will first kind of try to divide your sentence into two parts, like subject related and then verb related or predicate, and we will consider, like, we'll just analyze together the verb and everything that follows the verb. In this case, it's both a complement and one adjunct, which is as a category. What is the category of this adjunct? It's a prepositional phrase, and it functions as an adjunct as actually adverbial. Okay, we'll go into details, you know, later, but at this point you just need to remember the difference between a complement and adjunct. Okay, so speaking about objects, you know, you can also call objects complements. So objects are complements, so both direct and indirect object, they are just obligatory complements of the verb, let's say of this one. So it's fine if you just keep referring to these as direct and indirect objects, so that's also fine. Okay, this is the category we mentioned last time, adverbial complements with intransitive verbs, and you have these like with transitive verbs. So it just we need to be able to recognize actually if the verb is transitive or intransitive, and you can find that just simply by trying to, you know, cut off that part, and you will see, you know, the paper remained. It's like, you know, you cannot finish the sentence. It's not a complete sentence, although the verb itself is normally intransitive. So on the shelf is just additional information, but it's considered complement. So he remained there, or he is, okay, he is in London. This is what I mentioned earlier. So this is not, be careful, if you have adverbial, this is not a subject complement, okay, because subject complement, this is SVA, okay, it's not SVSC, because we cannot say he equals in London, you know, it's just location. Okay, also John belongs, you know, to several social clubs. So if you say that, I mean, it doesn't change anything in your analysis, just recognizing that this is adverbial, and you cannot actually have a normal sentence without these adverbials. And then we have also the same type of complement with transitive verbs, which is, you know, John put the money, and you more expect something after this object, direct object. So you have direct object and you have adverbial, which is again obligatory. And this was complex transitive that we also mentioned last time. It was type of transitivity, which was like, if you remember, I cannot draw it right now, but it was like, I don't have tools to draw, but okay, anyway, we'll do that in the class again if needed. So the difference between detransitive and complex transitive, I'll just try to, you know, verbally again explain this. So the difference between detransitive and complex transitive verbs is that detransitive verbs have two objects which are directly linked to the verb. So let's say he gives the gift to the girl. Okay, so it's he gives the gift, and he gives the girl, right, something. He gives the girl something, and he gives the gift to someone. So both the gift and the girl are just objects to this same verb. But in complex transitive, it's the government set the prisoners. Okay, it's of course direct linked between set and the prisoners, but free is not linked to the verb set, but it's linked to the prisoners. So it's basically the government set, and the second part would be the prisoners are free now. So free is related to the prisoners, and set is related to I mean the prisoners is related to the verb set, but free and set are not in direct relation. So I know how clear this is, but it will be easier on Monday, I guess, when we can discuss what I tell you, and it will be easier. And please prepare your questions for Monday. So complex transitive was a new kind of, transitivity to last time. So you have, it's very important to remember this one. Or she called her baby George. So she called her baby, and the baby is George. Or she painted her room, not black, okay, red, blue, whatever. Or it's, that example, like they elected him, whatever, a president. So these are some of the verbs that, they require complex transitivity, or they are complex transitive. Okay. So again, the difference between ditransitive verbs and complex transitive is in the fact that ditransitive verbs have two objects, two complements that are linked to the same verb, but in complex transitive verb you have two objects, but one is regular object of the verb and another one is just object to the object. It's called object complement. Okay. And then it's just the beginning basically of our syntax course. So it just, I know that again you have a lot of new terms, but I don't know if you remember adjuncts and complements. So adjuncts are usually prepositional phrases, and usually, always related to the verb. They describe the manner or time, place, the context of the action. But we will also have a separate lesson on adjuncts, but just here for the beginning we can have like 3 types of adjuncts. So let's see the difference between these 3 yellow, so we have, in fact, she was a very reasonable girl. Then we have, however, what could we do about it? And we have, he walked down the road slowly. If you compare these 3, basically you can go, let's call this one the first type, and then this would be second type, and this is the third one. And what might be the criterion if you think about that? If you think about, so this is an adjunct, and this is also adjunct, and this is adjunct. But if you think about what's different, how they differ, think about how well integrated they are within a sentence. So slowly is just an adverb, and it's always related to the verb. So he walked how slowly, in fact is also adjunct. And usually, as we already mentioned, we speak here about which category: prepositional phrase or adverbs. So this adjunct is, you see this, it appears at the beginning of the sentence, and you have a comma after it, so it's not really part of this sentence. So in fact it expressed some kind of my opinion, like Well, I believe she was a very reasonable girl, in fact. And finally, however, is not even, it's even further from this part of the sentence. And how? Because however relates more to some previous sentence. So you need to have some kind of context, like we have a problem. However, what could we do about it? So we have COVID virus. So, however, what could we do about it? We can have some online lessons. So I would stop here for today. So let's just go through this. Because these are all like new terms, I know that, but we need them in order to build, new knowledge. We will go into details, in the following lessons. We'll speak separately about verb phrases and all of these, functions. But here at this point, it's important just to be aware of different verb transitivity. So you can speak about monotransitive, intransitive, ditransitive, complex transitive, linking or copular verbs. You have examples for that. Then the distribution, don't forget, it's like how or where some element in a sentence appears. So it's again the story about categories and the functions. So the category can be, let's say, a noun phrase, but the same noun phrase can function as subject or object or a position or something else. So one function is subject, then we have predicate, of course, and it's important here just to try to remember that it's different than in at the level of morphology. So in morphology you used to just analyze the verb itself. Here in syntax we'll just go and look at the verb plus everything that complements that verb. So let's say in this case we will have verb plus subject complement, and then it can be verb plus direct object or indirect object, or adverbial, or object complement. This is a new function, and we mentioned this difference between direct, indirect object and object complement. And eventually we are here with adjuncts. So adjunct and complement, the differences between, actually adjuncts are not necessary, are not obligatory. They're not so important for the internal sentence structure. So I would say it's enough for today's class. So again, I would use this opportunity to actually inform you about our planned online lesson on Monday. So basically I just kept the same hour, it's 9:15. However, you will be informed, I guess, about this. Okay, stay healthy, enjoy this nice weather, and I hope really to see you soon. Bye guys.